Alright, welcome to our channel. Today in this video I am going to create this beautiful motion graphic effect using the Blender geometry node and also a shader node to create this beautiful effect. So how we can create this and how we can connect the different nodes and tweak their value to get this result. So now let's jump into the video. Alright, here I open the Blender and here we do some modeling which we can use later in geometry node workspace. So for that, by pressing Shift A, here I add a cylinder and move this cylinder along y-axis and hit the period key to focus this. Now I want to scale this cylinder along z-axis, something like here, and pressing Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now I enter into the edit mode. I am using the machine tool to enter into the edit and object mode, which is very fast. You can also enter into the edit mode by pressing tab by using the default Blender shortcut keys. So here I select this edge along with Alt to select the whole loop, and I also by pressing Alt and Shift to select this layer loop. Now Control B to bevel this, something like this, and back to the object mode, and by pressing Q I short this object by using the hard ops. I am using hard ops and box cutter to do modeling, which is very fast. You can also do this by right click and shade auto smooth to do the same effect. Now select this cube and enter into the geometry node workspace, and here I hit the new button to create the new geometry node tree. This cube is only for create the geometry node tree, and we can delete this group input to delete this cube, and here we add some nodes. Pressing a Shift A, search for the mesh line and enter into the group output, and here you can see there is a mesh line in our 3D viewport. This is having 10 number of counts. You cannot see directly these numbers in the 3D viewport. So for that, to view this, by pressing Shift A, search for the viewer, and also search for the index node. This is only the part of this tutorial. You cannot do if you want. So put this into the index and this geometry into the viewer and hit this to view this. You cannot still view because we enable this into the overlays, and here when we check on this attribute text, then you can see it start from 0 and end to the 9 to divide this into the 10 number of count, and you can also increase. Here you can see, but I want only 10, and disable this and also disconnect. Now here I search for the instance on point node and put it here, and here I also search for the grid, which is similar to the plane in the geometry in the 3D viewport, but this is more flexible values. We can change their size and vertices. So put this into the instances, then you can see there are a 10 stack of plane due to this number of count. So here we do some changings. I want to increase the size up to 10, and also increase the vertices along x and y axis up to 20. You can see in wireframe these vertices. So now we have this kind of structure. Now here I enter another instance on point node, and in the outliner we drag the cylinder which we modeled earlier to use this in the geometry node. and put this into the instances, and here you can see we enter into the top view and scale this to view our cylinder something like this, and here I enter another node to displace every other cylinder to the x-axis. So for that, here I search for the set position node and put it here, and here you can see if I change this, the whole structure move along x-axis, and we can also move along y-axis, but I want only every other cylinder instance along x-axis. So we cannot use here uh, individual axis. So for that, here I search for the combine xyz to put this vector into the offset. Now we have individual output of these axes. So here we do some math. To do this, search for the math node and put it here into the x-axis, and we duplicate this by pressing Shift D and put this value here, and here I change this to the truncated modulo to do every other instances along the x-axis or any axis you want here to choose this. So for that, so here I add another node which is the index to do this. Put this into this, and here I want only two every other cylinder to move this along x-axis. So here I put the value 2. Now you can see, and now I adjust this from this node, and here you can see we first change this to the multiply, and now put this. Now we can change this every other and put this something like here. Now I want to decrease the distance of these stack of cylinder along y-axis. So for that, here I change this value something like this. Beautiful. Now we have this kind of structure, and I also want to stack them horizontally. So for this, by pressing 3, we turn into the right orthographic view to see the clearly, and here in the mesh line we decrease this value to stack the cylinder on each other, something like this. Now we have this kind of structure. Beautiful. Select this node and move it here. Here I enter another node which is the realize these instances to treat these instances individually. Now I want to animate this. So for that, here we change this value to scale this stack of cylinder. So for that, here I search for the noise texture and put it here and put this vector into the scale. And here we do some adjustment by pressing Shift A, search for the color ramp and tweak this value to find some suitable adjustment. We can also decrease the scale to 1 and detail to 1 and scale this something like this, and here we can also decrease this value to make these instances more visually realistic. So move this, and here we find here this is looking nice. We turn this noise texture to the 4D, so we can animate this by using this W number. Now I want this animation looping. So for that, I duplicate this noise texture and put it here and search for the mix color node and put this factor into B and this into the A and this into the color ramp. We cannot change now the values of this noise texture except W to do this animation looping. So here we start from the 0 frame and my timeline is 120 frame. So for that, over this W value and hit I to insert the keyframe, make this vector to the 0 and hit I to insert the keyframe. Now jump to the last value and here I enter the number 1, animate this and hit I to insert keyframe and make this one to hit I to insert keyframe. Now back to the frame 0 and here we put the number which is opposite to this number at the last frame which is 120. Here is -1 to make this animation fully looping. Now we have this. Now if I play this, you can see nice looping effect. Beautiful. Now I want to add the material to these stacks. So for that, here I add the new node which is set material node and put it here, and also in material we create a new material and pick this material from here. I want the stack have a different color. So for that, here I search for the store name attribute node which we can use to link our material in the shader editor. So for that, here I hit any number, just T, to give this store name attribute and also search for the random value node and put this into this. And now we enter into the shader editor. Here I have set my material workspace. You can also set this from here, but I do here add the material to our structure. So as you can see, this is our material which we pick in the geometry node workspace, and here I search for the attribute node to see our attribute node is working, and here you can see, here I choose instance to do this because these are all instances, and here I put the number T, and here you can see our attribute node is working. Beautiful. Now here I search for the mix shader node and make some mask. So for that, search for the color ramp. Sorry, this is the mix color. Search for the color ramp and put this vector into the color ramp and this color into the vector of the mix shader, and make this constant. And now you can see the different color which we can change this later. Now in the second slot of this shader, we search for the glass and put it here, and I want three color, white, gloss, and other color. So for that, here I search for the color ramp. This is again mixed color. Search for the color ramp and put this vector into this and this color into the principal BSDL. Here you can see we can make some adjustment and pick this color something like this, and make this color not fully white here. Now we have this kind of structure. Beautiful. Now enter into the layout workspace, and here we set our camera and do some composition. So for that, first I add a background which is a plane, and scale this. Control A to apply the scale, and also move this plane along the z-axis, something like here, and also search for the camera and control R0 to focus this, and to lock this camera and adjust our scene. Here we can do some setting. I think here is looking fine. And now unlock this, and here we add some light to this scene. In the word, I have an HDRI, and here I decrease this value. We can see this in rendered view because I am using cycles to decrease this strength of this HDRI, something like 0.3, and search for the light, which is spotlight, and move it here and rotate to the very center, and here we increase this spot size and also increase the light, something like here, and to here we set this to the render region. Now we have this kind of structure. So in this way you can easily create this motion graphic effects by using the Blender geometry node and shader editors. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video.